That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically stands for presence. So anyone who knows me, Analiza, I'm not really a tattoo person. It wasn't a thing I was like dying to get. I think I said that to someone. They're like, yeah, I know you're not a tattoo person. But it was that experience was so important to me because I felt like I lost myself in that process, that I wanted something to sort of remind and recenter myself. So I found this, it stands for presence. And for me, it really means a couple things, which is one, to remember who to be present for. And then two, that I can be present in hard things and still take good things from them. It's like, it's okay to go through bad things. I think I've spent a lot of my life trying to prevent going through bad things. And this was just a challenge, and I took a ton away from it sort of personally. I developed a ton, and so it was worth it. And then the straight line for me is just a reminder to trust myself, and to, like, when your gut's saying like, I think I'm right about this, or I think I like to, it was sort of just the sort of reminder to me of the backbone. And then the ripples kind of brings it full circle to our conversation in the beginning about asking for help, which is like, it is a reminder to me to also ask for help. The sort of like, people always ask if it's like ripples of impact, but for me, it's about like, you also don't have to do this alone. And what I'll often do is be like, I'm okay. Until then I'm like, I'm not okay. I sort of go from one to the other. And so it's the reminder to me to like, not wait till that moment where you're like, oh God, I'm not okay, is to just sort of ask for help from the beginning. It's not a sign of weakness. And if anything, I think it really brings people together.
We all know that quote, it takes a village. But how strong is your village? And how often do you ask for help? Today, we're talking with Lindsay Kruse, a leadership and program consultant. She shares with us how, as a child, she was like a mom where she would take care of everyone else, her friends, her community, her peers at school. And she kept taking care of others, even as she got her BA from Cornell and then her MBA from Columbia. Kept doing this even as she started her career in consulting and then in education. And with all of that, she started getting a ton of leadership opportunities. But when Lindsay became a mom herself, she had a breakdown moment, and she realized she couldn't take care of everyone else and put everyone else always in front of her. In fact, she had to start asking for help and start building her own community. In Boss Mamas, we talk about this idea of calling your community, that we know that we're not alone and that we can't do everything by ourselves. So we can ask for help, not just from our friends and family, but even from people we don't know well. Lindsay's such a great example of this. She shares with us the specific strategy she took from going from pretty much never asking for help to asking for help as a go-to strategy. I'm really excited for you to meet this boss mama. Lindsay, I'm excited to talk with you. And I actually want to kick off our conversation with your dog. You showed me behind you, you have such a cute little canine, but he's got a cone around his head. What is going on with your dog?
He is our pandemic puppy. So we got him April 4th, 2020, right as things were shutting down. They literally handed him to us through a car window. And he's been lovely. And then about a month ago, our dog sitter had him, and I guess he fell or jumped out of the window and got dragged for a while. So he spent 4 days in the hospital, and then we have been sort of triaging and nursing him back to health for the last month. So it has been, I've been telling people it's like having a newborn without any parental leave.
So cute.
Yeah.
I'm super sad. I'm glad that he has you as his mommy taking care of him.
Yeah.
But with your big job, Lindsay, you got your job, you have your 2 beautiful kids and all the things going on in life. How are you finding time without the family leave to take care of him?
I would say the biggest thing we did was ask for help, which is not always in my nature, but I'm getting more and more better at it. Yeah, I mean, he had like bandages on every leg, stitches on 3 parts of his body, just all, painkillers every couple of hours. And so it was sort of a breaking point that we realized we needed help. We've got a daughter who goes to school an hour away that needs to be driven there. Our son goes to elementary school. And so we had to figure it out. So I sent out an email to friends and neighbors in town and just said, I'm not usually good at asking for help, but we need it. And here's all the things in the short term we could use help with. And here are all the things in the long term that this is making us realize we need systems for now that everything's coming back in the pandemic. And we just, of all the bad things with the accident, I think the amazing thing has been just our faith restored in humanity. We've had, neighbors that we know, but, aren't, super close with, who have just been, I literally had him at my neighbor's today so that he had somebody home with him. And we've got someone taking and picking up our son from school and literally taking pictures of him at the Halloween parade because we need to be home with the dog. And we've just had a whole village and community helping us.
That's beautiful. I have to say that as a woman, as a mom, asking for help is hard. There's so much pressure, I think, put on us that I think also comes from ourselves, that we've got to do all the things. So I'm excited to talk to you, Lindsay.
To look like we're handling it.
Yes, you handle it. If you're a good mom, you're a good leader, you're handling it. So I want to go back to this because I've seen you transform. This was not the way in which you and I have been friends forever that I first met you, but I actually want to crank it all the way back to when you were a kid. And tell me, back in the day when you were doing all the things, handling it, where do you think this came from?
Growing up, we just had a lot of, we had a ton of love. We were really, really cared for. And we just had a lot of change and sometimes instability. So we moved about every 4 or 5 years to a different country, then to different states. And then we had periods of real income insecurity where my parents were out of a job. I remember when we were in North Carolina in the middle of summer, we didn't have money to fix the air conditioning. I remember having a friend spend the night and her parents having to come pick her up because it was too hot for her to stay over. And then my father also, when I was in the 3rd grade, was diagnosed with cancer. And so they were also navigating that treatment, a lot of job changes. And so I think 2 things came out of that. I think I, at a very early age, I'm the youngest of 2, just sort of developed this mentality of like, you guys got a lot going on. Like, I'll just take care of myself. I won't add to the stress. You guys go worry about your thing and I'll try and be easy. And I think in watching my parents navigate everything that they did, I think I also just learned, like, you handle it. We have a saying in our family. My maiden name is Hamilton, and it's called the Hamilton pity party. And my parents used to say, like, you get a day to feel sorry for yourself and to cry. And then the next day you put your big girl pants on and you deal with it. And that was really sort of what they did throughout their whole life. No matter what happened, it was sort of like, you can have your sort of boo-hoos, and then it was like, okay, it's the problem still there, so you just got to handle it. So I think that was sort of in a very early age, just sort of the way I was built.
I'm imagining you at this young age. There was so much going on from your dad, from all this moving, from the not having enough money. And now you're feeling this responsibility that you should handle it. How did this mentality then drive on? Because you went on to these great schools and had this successful career, but how do you think it, I'll say, infiltrated the way in which you made decisions?
I think in 2 ways. I think a very clear way is I was like, that will never happen to me. And so it was do whatever you need to do to get a good job. So that meant sort of head down and just do the work and get in a good school. It was all the external markers, right? It was sort of like in all this instability, being able to see these external markers of like, okay, I'm doing okay. Okay, I'm doing okay. Okay, I did okay in high. Okay, I got into a college. Okay, I got a good job. And so it was sort of all this external recognition to know if I was, quote unquote, okay. So I think that was a huge part of it, was just like, that's why I went into management consulting. I want a good, stable job that I can make good money in, that's interesting. And My husband, my husband and I always joke because in college, he wrote a humor column and he DJ'd for a radio station. And he just did all these things that make him like a super interesting human. And I worked part-time, and then I did like professional associations. I was in the like Public Relations Student Society of America in college. Like when I look back at that now, I'm like, oh my God, why did anybody hang out with me? I think it was internally motivated. Like I will go to a good school. I will get a good job. I will take care of myself. And then I think it was also valued in my family of like, my dad arranged job shadowing. It was like, all I think with the best of intentions, but really about like, no, really get a good job.
It's so interesting that you mentioned two things. One is that there's so much external validation that we're doing the right thing, making the right decisions, and that we don't source that from within. And then the second piece is how much we lose ourselves. Like what actually makes us happy? That starts early. And so it's not that surprising now when we talk to other women leaders, what makes you happy? So let's fast forward. I know that you made a big decision to switch from consulting, business school consulting, and then you moved into education, which is where you and I met. And about that time, then you had a kid. So now when I saw you, it's like Lindsay Kruse, she does all of the things, the project management, helps mother us, take care of us, because you're not only taking care of yourself and your family, but you're taking care of all these other leaders. And how did you navigate being pregnant, that whole now motherhood?
I was the first person to get pregnant at the organization. So I left business school and started in education. And about a year in, got pregnant with my daughter, Maggie. And we literally didn't have a maternity policy. My boss at the time was like, we should write one of those. Like, what do you think it should, what do you think it should be? So there was sort of this pressure of like, don't put that on me to decide what we get. In some ways, it's great. But I remember specifically being at one of our schools and having a teacher pull me aside, who I sort of knew, but didn't know well. And she pulled me aside and she said, we're all watching you. Right. And I was like, I wasn't aware of that. What are you watching me for? And she was like, to see what happens after you have, like, to see if you come back, to see if you work, to see, all of the things. And I just thought like, oh God, like that is a lot. That is a lot. Like, I'm just trying to figure out what is happening to my body right now.
I remember, Lindsay Kruse, when you were the head of our leadership development cohort, you would write these so thoughtful cards to us. I mean, it wasn't like, good luck with the school year, Analiza. It was a page long of details about me and what made me special and my childhood and stories you remembered about me. I mean, I kept those cards, Lindsay. They were so thoughtful. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, she's writing these letters to everybody. How is she doing that? She is so over the top amazing. And then on top of that, I also remember when you had Maggie, it was like nothing had changed. You were still doing all the night events that we did, the weekend events, and all these really special things. And I remember you told me a story. You said, yeah, things are fine at home. And I said, what do you mean by that? And you said, well, I haven't been home for a while. And my husband told me that when I got home, or when I wasn't home, Maggie had a sock of mine and she was cradling it, and you were laughing. And I was like, why are you laughing? And she said, well, because I think it was a dirty sock.
Very likely. Very likely.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. It was sweet, but also scary because I was also watching you. I didn't have kids yet. And I was wondering what life would be like for me. So we were there together for a number of years, and you eventually decided to leave. So what happened?
Yeah. That story both makes me laugh and makes me incredibly sad for that moment. So I would say, at the time I decided to leave, I had progressed into being sort of the senior leader of human capital. And so I think two things happened. I was pregnant now with my son, my second. We were living in Princeton. I was commuting an hour into the city to do the job. And for better, for worse, I think I would do it differently now. But in my head, human capital meant two things. It meant I shouldn't just be in our home office. It meant I also needed to be in our school. So I was not just commuting from Princeton into New York, but then trying to go out to Newark and out to Brooklyn and out to sort of all of these places to understand sort of what our team needed and to be present. I also, I think, took too much on myself, thinking if anybody is unhappy in this organization, it is somehow my job to address it because I am in charge of human capital. And then I think we were just getting big. And to be honest, I had 13 bosses. And so I was about to have 2 kids at home. I had a commute. I was doing a lot of influencing and persuading, and it just felt like the moment to say enough. And I had built it to a point that someone could carry it forward. And it just felt like the time to think differently about my work. I think having Sam forced the issue, but I think it was a really prime time for it.
It's interesting, the second kid. I feel like a lot happens in terms of
the second one that breaks you. It's when the first one you think you can do it.
I have to say, the second one does break you. It broke me. It broke me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So fast forward, you become a consultant. You then take a job, and I get an email and I'm surprised, and you and I chat about it. And you say, it's a pretty great role.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing I know, I think you were there for 2 years. Is that right? And then you decide to leave. So I want to actually get to those points because I feel like these transitions, second child, this job, what made you decide to go? Because I remember you told me how pretty great it was.
I think the way that I have evolved from all of those sort of originally external markers of recognition is really getting a little bit more quiet and listening to myself and being okay that sort of my career sort of a wave of like leaning and leaning back and sort of doing these moments, or just even not necessarily leaning back, but rethinking and restructuring the way that I work. I have had a really great coach. I still have the Post-it note on my desk that says lean into your truth, not your capacity, which is really just about like, what do you need and want? Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. So that role that I took sort of along the way in my parenthood journey, both of my kids were diagnosed with learning disabilities, which was just sort of this like eye-opening experience, both because in my entire life I've worked to create equity and address inequity in schools. And even though I thought I was doing all of this good, I still realized there's this whole group of kids that are not being served. It sort of reframed my thinking of what I need to do and be as a parent, right? And so the job that I took was related to that work. It was working in organizations and with educators around students with learning disabilities. So in terms of a career opportunity, it was an executive level role. I would get to build and lead my own team. It was being surrounded by experts in the very work that I both cared about professionally, and that would inform, my support of my own kids as a parent. But it was, I would say, a great personal sacrifice. So it was just sort of a different kind of leadership team where seat time was valued, being in the office, being present. There was a lot of sort of politics and dynamics. And so I would just carry a lot of that. I was commuting into the city, which I swore I'd never do again, but I was like, this is the opportunity. And when I decided to take that opportunity, it was also when I thought we sort of had my daughter's program on autopilot. It's like, I got 2 years till middle school. I know the team at the school, like we got this. This is my moment to like take this opportunity. And literally a month into that job, we got you get evaluated every 3 years to sort of assess. And we got her evaluation back a month into the job. And basically her sort of outcomes were going like this, further and further away from her peers rather than closer and closer. And we had to make dramatic change. So we had to pull her from the school. We had to send her to a different school. Sort of all the things that I thought would be on smooth sailing were not. We were transitioning to like, oh, this child is going to need something different. The sort of breaking point of sort of why I decided to change was, I felt deeply committed to the story that you tell resonate. I'm like, I felt committed to my team. I had brought them there. I had built this team. We were driving this work. We had really important work to do. And anytime I build something, I don't leave because it's hard and I just don't. And so I was grappling with a lot of those emotions, but also realizing that the school we had put my daughter in was not doing it. So we had already pulled her from her local school. We'd put her into a private school focused on kids with learning disabilities. And then the more and more I was learning through my job, the more and more I was realizing this school is not doing what it needs to do for her. And so, I had a moment where I thought like, I'm going in every day and working these hours and sort of carrying this weight for other people's kids. And I'm missing my own. I'm missing what's happening with her right now. So I was doing a lot of soul searching. My husband and I were on a trip up in Maine. And so we had this 3-hour stretch to talk about it. And he's like, look, I will support you, whatever you decide to do. But he also said, we're in our 40s, we've worked our butts off to get where we are and we deserve to enjoy our life. And I just had a moment, I was like, but I can't leave because I brought this, but like I was going through the list of all the like grown-up humans that I couldn't disappoint. And then I turned and looked in the back seat and was like ding, 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 ding. Like they just can't speak for themselves in this moment because they don't know to say that. And so I'm worried about all of the grown adults and not thinking about the 2 people in my life that I actually really do have to take care of and be present. And so it was sort of after that moment, I was like, okay, that's what I need to do. And then made a plan to transition. And, it was hard and I felt really bad and I don't regret it for a second. It was absolutely the right thing to do. And, I got my daughter into a different school that for the first time, honestly, in 7 years, I do not carry any of the weight of advocating for her, which for any parents who have kids that they've had that for, I think, the change in your life that comes from not having to do that, to sort of beg folks to see your child as fully capable and human. So yeah, that is the story. I can tell you a little bit about the tattoo that I got.
Yes, I would love to, for people who cannot see it, can you describe what's on your wrist?
It looks like sort of teardrops in a line and then ripples on the side like that. Let's see if we can, that's it. And it basically stands for presence. So anyone who knows me, Analiza, I'm not really a tattoo person. It wasn't a thing I was like dying to get. I think I said that to someone. They're like, yeah, I know you're not a tattoo person. But it was that experience was so important to me because I felt like I lost myself in that process, that I wanted something to sort of remind and recenter myself. So I found this, it stands for presence. And for me, it really means a couple things, which is 1, to remember who to be present for. And then 2, that I can be present in hard things and still take good things from them. It's like, it's okay to go through bad things. I think I've spent a lot of my life trying to prevent going through bad things. And this was just a challenge and I took a ton away from it sort of personally. I developed a ton, and so it was worth it. And then the straight line for me is just a reminder to trust myself, and to like when your gut's saying like, I think I'm right about this, or I think I like to. It was sort of just the sort of reminder to me of the backbone. And then the ripples kind of brings it full circle to our conversation in the beginning about asking for help, which is like, it is a reminder to me to also ask for help. The sort of like, people always ask if it's like ripples of impact, but for me, it's about like, you also don't have to do this alone. And what I'll often do is be like, I'm okay. Until then I'm like, I'm not okay. I sort of go from one to the other. And so it's the reminder to me to like, not wait till that moment where you're like, oh God, I'm not okay, is to just sort of ask for help from the beginning. It's not a sign of weakness. And if anything, I think it really brings people together. So that's the tattoo. 4 meetings in one.
The tattoo is awesome because it ties in your childhood of wanting external validation that you're okay, to actually realizing that it comes from within, that you can trust yourself and trust your wants, lean into what you want, like your coach said, and enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
And that in this process, we can't stop hard things. The hard things will come no matter what, but can we ride the wave? Can we go and believe that we will survive? So it's lovely. The last part you mentioned of that tattoo, that meaning of we're not meant to do it alone, to ask for help. Talk to me about that, because that's a very different Lindsay Kruse philosophy from back in the day.
I have this lovely, lovely group of women in my life called the WOMOs. And it started when we were at our job together. It was all a group of a few women, all sort of senior level positions, who were sort of new into motherhood. And we were sort of struggling to find our model, like of sort of fully stay at home to fully staffed at home so you can be at work all the time. And we were sort of saying, like, where's the middle road? Where are the people who want to do really meaningful, impactful work, but also want time to be present and to do that. And so we started this group, and we did everything from surveys to, there was sort of an expanded group that this went out to, but like everything to what supplies do you have, to what do you outsource at home, to like, what's your morning routine look like, to how do you navigate this conversation, sort of very like practical, tactical, like how the hell do you navigate this whole thing? These women are probably my dearest friends. My husband called the bat phone this week. We call it the WOMO bat phone, of just like when someone needs something, we jump. And so we've talked each other through everything from work transition, all those transitions in my life, they were a part of. We did consultations, we talked each other through those. So we've gone through those, we've gone through deaths in our families, we've gone through divorces, we've gone through sort of every sort of life moment as both moms and professionals and just quite frankly humans. So I would say that was sort of my first it was like letting your guard down professionally and just creating these friends that you can be like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, what do you guys do? And to just sort of have a place to vent and process that. I think that was a big part. And then I think as I have grown and sort of realized, like, it's not fun to get to the meltdown stage, and it's just not. I've done a lot of the internal work on that, of like, that's just not like, I think we used to glorify stress, and I think there was a certain martyrdom in busy, and there was martyrdom in being like, I've done all of these things. And I think as I've gotten older and thought about, it's like the Mary Oliver, what are you going to do with this one precious life? It's like, I just don't want that. And I don't think it's necessary to be both, feel successful and have impact, and to be able to have the life that you want. So, and I would say the other thing, what was my most recent inspiration with the dog, was I have a very dear friend from this work whose husband was dealing with cancer during the pandemic. And she and I are very sort of cut from the same cloth. And she created a text chain of 7 women and was just like, I'm so bad at asking for help, but people tell me I should. And that became the light. She would use that text to vent if it was just like, oh, like or to celebrate great news about her husband's journey, or to like, does anybody have a solution for X, or we're home with chemo treatments, but sort of everything. And I was so in awe of her, of watching how she navigated this pandemic and then something so sort of critical in her family that, when everything happened with the dog, and I just thought like, I don't even know how we're going to do this. I immediately thought of her and was like, right, who are my people? Who do I need to email and just say like, we need ideas and we need hands and we need help. People are just happy to like it. I think we don't put enough, we think it's like a sign of weakness, or we just think like, oh, I don't want to bother them. And I think that, I think we could certainly overstep it, but I just think people have actually been really excited to help, which has been sort of an amazing learning for me.
Those examples are really helpful because it highlights, one, the power of developing community and friendships, your WOMO, and we'll link that Atlantic monthly article about your group. So I'll include that there. The second is the definition that's used of being busy and martyrdom, that we don't actually have to take that definition. We're so used to saying, hey, how are you? Busy. What about you? Busy. And we all go around saying how busy we are. It's like a resume. I know I'm going to busy up you because I am busier. So actually saying that's actually, no, I don't want to be that. Yeah. I want to be something else, which is have more joy, a little more balance in this wave-like life we have. And then the third thing is that even without your closest friends, the people you can trust, you can actually ask people you don't know. And it's surprising to see how many people want to help. In fact, I find it so honorable when people ask me for help, because it's an opportunity.
Well, that's it, right?
Yeah, like, oh my gosh, they thought of me as someone that they could ask for something. And I think it was Ben Franklin who said that a way in which to build relationships, it's actually by asking for help. And when the person reciprocates, there's a tied connection that builds community. So actually you're onto something that not only is it not a sign of weakness, but it's a way to ask to build relationships. So lovely. All right, with that, any other advice for other boss mamas out there trying to ask for help and get started on this journey of
building that village? Like for me, the WOMOs were the lifeline of sort of all things work and life. And I found that in every place that I've gone, I found sort of a group of women. And I guess the other thing I would just say is, like at the risk of sounding cheesy, just like allow yourself to be human. I think the thing that I evolved to as a leader from like feeling like everybody's watching you, I think even in that moment, what I felt like I needed to do was like model the humanity of that and just keep it real. And I think the pandemic has forced us to be real in a way in which we haven't. I mean, you have like dogs showing up on your Zoom and you just like, there's no way to hide the stuff that's happening in our lives. And so I think I would just say like model that for other women and create space for other women to be human. And I think this like lean into your truth and not your capacity is just like, we have to stop trying to prove things to other people.
That's great. So with that, let's do our lightning round questions.
Perfect.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Clearly chocolate.
Cooking or takeout?
I love to cook, but I'll always say takeout. It's easier.
Climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
This is such a you question. I like to think I would jump from a plane, but I would probably be more likely to climb a mountain.
Have you ever worn socks with sandals?
Not until I had a dog and I had to take him out at weird times of night. So not in public, we'll say that.
How would you rate your karaoke skills on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being Mariah Carey?
If it's 90s hip hop, then like 9. That is my jam. Everything out. That is what I did for my 40th birthday party. And it's what I did for my farewell party for my last job.
What's the recent book you read or a really good book you've read?
So the book that I've read recently is No Cure for Being Human by Kate Bowler. It's a friend of my husband's, but I think a lot of people may know her, but it's amazing. She's someone who was type A, academic, really sort of shooting for the stars, and then was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. But it is a very good, human, funny book about sort of the things that people say to you when you get a diagnosis like that, and like what is actually helpful, and the sort of just to get perspective, I think, on life. It's a great book.
What's the favorite way to practice self-care?
Okay, so this is a good one. This took me maybe 40 years to learn, is sleep. My husband would, he will roll over hearing this. Like, this is something he's been telling me. So we've been together 19 years. Like, I think he's been telling me this from the beginning, like, just go to sleep and it'll be better in the morning. And I'm like, hey, no, it is my go-to. If I am just feeling like the world is crazy, I sleep, I have a nap. It's better. It's always better.
What's a good professional development you've done?
I gotta say, Together, Teacher and Leader by Maya Heck-Merlin. It's one of my favorites. I go to her books all the time. And then I would also say Christina Harbridge for, she runs a company called Allegory Inc. And I've done a ton of hers just on how you can communicate so others listen, and just the power of storytelling in our work.
What's your definition of a boss mama?
For me, the boss mama, like, there's so much in the, I guess, I hope you enjoy the dog. For me, the boss mama is, I think there's so much we can make about hustle culture. And for me, it's about somebody who is just like living that balance and that seesaw of doing work that's important to them, whatever that work might be. That could be a work in the home, but just doing something that is true to them, that makes them happy, and being present for their life.
Like your tattoo.
Exactly.
What advice would you give your younger self?
I think my younger self, I think I would give myself 2 pieces of advice, which is just like, stop worrying about the external markers. And I think something I learned because of sort of everything we had in childhood, I used to think that if I could worry about it enough, then I could either prevent it or just be ready when or if something challenging happened. And what I've learned since then is just that, like, then you're spending all this time worrying, being unhappy. And then even if it happens, then you're just doubly unhappy. And so I have sort of learned to not, to just navigate that a little bit better, not try and control. I mean, if there's anything the pandemic's taught us, it's that we can't control.
And then where can we find you?
Where can you find me? I am on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram. My daughter is trying to get me on TikTok, but I'm not there yet.
Okay, last question. Do you have a final ask, recommendation, or any parting thoughts with our audience?
I think it would just be to find your village and build it and nurture it. And I think make it a real village. I think the thing that sort of happened is in ours was, like, we used to make jokes when one of us was making a transition, like, can I still be a WOMO if I don't have like this job? And so I think we've just allowed ourselves to be super vulnerable and human. And it's sort of a, like, once you're in, you're in. So keep your guard down and be human.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, for this time.
Thanks. Sorry for the little dog joining at the end. That's our life right now.
Thank you.
Analiza.